Eggs, Day 5, Chapter 22. The first Saturday in August featured perfect flea market clouds, sun blockers, but not rainmakers. The tables on the gravel acre along Pine Ridge Pike displayed everything from watches to monkey wrenches. One of the tables was rented by Refrigerator John, who in turn donated a third of his space to Primrose. David helped arrange the wares from their Thursday night shopping sprees. One of them was a toilet seat. A sign taped to it said, "Wouldn't this make a charming picture frame?" There were also two paperback mystery novels, a painting of a bullfighter on velvet, an old blue-green Coke bottle, 5 baseball cards, a hubcap, an orange-colored bowl, a vase, a beaded lizard-looking pocketbook, and, under the table, the child's rocking chair that John had repaired. Primrose was even grumpier than usual this day. John had decided not to have a bait business, after all, so there was no market for worms. Primrose was still $20 short on paint money, and the customers strolling by the tables were mostly the same ones she saw every week. Lookers, not buyers, John called them. Lookers drifted sideways toward the table, never facing it squarely, never quite standing still, moving along even as they eyed the goods. Sometimes they gave a quick glance and were gone, sometimes a slower broom sweep of the eyes. Occasionally, a pair of eyes would land on a particular object, stare a moment, then look up at Primrose, as if to see what sort of oddball would actually ask money for such a thing. Even more rarely, someone would pick up an object and say, "How much?" Primrose's heart would quicken as she told them the price, and sink as they set it back down and walked off. Early in the summer, Primrose had taken John's advice and treated each table approach like a golden opportunity. She would rise from her chair, stand smartly behind the table, and smile as the person looked over the merchandise and walked off. As the summer went on, she dropped first the smile, then the smart pose. Now it took the sight of an open wallet to get her out of the chair. She slumped and grumped and stared into outer space and muttered with the regularity of a grandfather clock, "This business sucks." Half the morning had gone by on this day when a shopper finally held up something, the Coke bottle, and said, "How much?" "What do you care?" Primrose snarled. The shopper gaped disbelievingly at the slouching girl, set the bottle down, and left. To the next one who said how much, Primrose answered, $1,000. By 11 o'clock she was challenging nearly everyone who came near the table. "You gonna look or you gonna buy? You touch it, you buy it. What you looking at?" When he wasn't laughing, John was begging her to stop. "You're ruining my business." Meanwhile, word about the rude teenager spread across the fleet of the tables. Primrose's behavior was neither new nor entertaining to David, so he occupied himself by eating. Every half hour he visited the vending truck. By 11 o'clock his stomach was stuffed, his pockets empty of all but a dime. What could he buy for a dime? He wandered among the tables, scanning the goods, clothes, knickknacks, books, tools, toys, utensils. When he came to a table half covered with framed black and white photographs, he barely gave it a glance, then stopped cold. He came closer. The pictures were all of people's faces. The frames were fancy, tinted with gold or silver. They came in many sizes. At least half of them, 10 he counted, were pictures of the same man, like TV sets in a store all turned to the same channel. And here was the shocker. Each one looked exactly like the little one in Primrose's pocket and the bigger one on her dresser in her four-wheeled room. The same handsome face, the same mustache, the same sly, slightly tilted smile, the same black, shiny, combed-back hair. Primrose's father. What was a picture of Primrose's father doing here? Why were they selling it? Why would anyone other than Primrose or her mother want to buy it? See something you like?" said the lady behind the table. David didn't know what to say. "Looking for a present for somebody?" The lady was eating a hot dog. A spot of mustard gave her upper lip a yellow mole. "Your mother, maybe?" "No." She let him look a while. She bit into the hot dog. "This ain't used junk like most of the tables. This stuff's new." David said nothing. He pointed with the hot dog. "That there's a nice one you're looking at. Only $3. $3 for Primrose's father picture. Okay. For you, $2.50. David said, "How come you're selling his picture?" "I'm not," said the lady. Her tongue, like a nightcrawler, slid out, poked around her upper lip till the yellow spot was gone, back into its hole. "It's the frames I'm selling, not the pictures." "I just want a picture," said David. $2, you get the whole shebang." David held up his dime. "This is all I have." A voice croaked, "Give the kid a picture." The voice from an old man in a lawn chair. He was eating something out of a plastic cup. The lady growled, "What am I, Santa Claus?" Give it to him." The lady glared at the old man, glared at David. She snorted like a horse and snatched up one of the small silvery frames. She worked out the picture and jabbed it, scowling at David. "Merry Christmas." David took it and walked away, and now he wondered, why? Why had he asked for it? What was he going to do with it? He didn't know. He stared at the picture. Could he be wrong? No. Thanks to Primrose, he had seen the face too many times to be wrong. This was the man, all right. Her father, Bob. So why wasn't he racing to her and shouting, "Primrose, look, your father's picture. It's all over the table there." Because something didn't feel right. Something too wispy. It would not fill the hollow of a thought. Something that made him want to drape a sheet over the table of gold and silver frames. Across a dozen tables he could see Primrose. She was lobbing popcorn at the backs of people who failed to stop at her table. He put the picture in his pocket. Minutes later, it was Primrose who came running. She was waving money. "Look, $25. Some lady bought the orange bowl. She said it's called Fiesta ware, and she has a whole set of it except for the bowl. And she said, would I take $25 for it?" He grabbed his arm. "Come, we're packing up. We're going for paint." Chapter 23. David just could not make himself do it. He put down his brush. "Primrose, are you sure?" She looked down from the roof. "If you ask me that one more time, but it feels so weird." "You're going to look weird with a white face in about 2 seconds. But whoever heard of a bedroom without windows? You have to have at least one. Why? So the egg throwers can look in at me? So you can look out. There's nothing to look out at. Paint. It had been hard enough to paint the side windows, but the last remaining window, the most important window of all, Primrose thumped across the roof on her knees with an angry swat, left a 3-foot track of Bouton's white primer across the front windshield. "There go your excuses," she growled. "Now finish it." Reluctantly, David took up his brush, standing on a chair, began painting the windshield. The last thing he saw inside before the last brush stroke was the propped picture on Primrose's dresser. He had wanted to ask his father about it, but he would not be home for days, and David did not have the patience to wait, so he had resorted to his grandmother. First he asked her if she knew that picture frames were sold with people's pictures already in them. His grandmother, who was snipping the stems of flowers from the backyard, simply stared at him for a moment, shocked and overjoyed that he would ask her a question. She quickly recovered and said yes. She knew that. David walked away. If he had to speak to her, at least he would do it in pieces, and if possible, at her inconvenience. Later he caught her as she was talking on the phone. "Why did they do it?" he said. "Just a second," she said into the phone, not at all irritably, and cupped her hand over the receiver. "Do what, David?" "Put pictures in the frames, so they can give the customer an idea of how their own picture would look in the frame." She was heading out the door for her evening walk when he asked her what kind of people they used for those pictures. "Oh, usually models or movie stars," she said. She waited at the door, her expression saying, "I like you talking to me. Please ask me more." As she watched her favorite TV show that night, he thrust the picture at her. "Know who this is?" She hesitated, then dared to take it from his hand. She lowered the volume with the remote control. She nodded. "This is Clark Gable. He was a movie star many years ago." She took the picture back. It bugged him that he could not annoy her. "How old is he?" "Oh, he died some time ago. If he were living, I guess he'd be in his 90s, maybe older." "His name's not Bob?" "Bob?" She stared at the picture. "No, I'm sure it's Clark Gable. He was known as the king of the movies." And not Primrose's father, David had fully realized in bed that night. Primrose thinks he's her father, but he's not. She's wrong. It took them most of the day to lay a primer and final coat. Nothing on the outside showed that wasn't white. Wheel stumps, windows, fenders, everything. "Looks dumb," said David. "It won't," said Primrose. "It's nowhere near—" Uh-oh. She was looking toward the street. A long, chromy car was pulling up to the house. A lady in the black, skin-tight pants got out, followed by a small, yipping, long-haired, brown and yellow dog. The lady pointed to the front yard, which was indistinguishable from the dirt and gravel driveway. "Poop here, Mimi," she said. Mimi pooped, and the two of them went to the front door. The dog looked at Primrose and David. The lady did not. The dog yipped. They entered the house. Primrose picked up a paint stirrer, walked over to Mimi's warm sculpture, lifted it carefully from the dirt, and deposited it on the back seat floor of the long car. "Come on," she said. "Wait till you see this." She led him by the hand to David's surprise around the house. "Shh, tiptoe," and in the back door. At the drapery wall to the reading room, she knelt and pulled him down. She drew the drape aside an inch or two. Madame Dufy, Mimi the dog, and the black-legged lady were sitting on the rug. Madame Dufy had one of Mimi's paws in her hand. She appeared to be intently studying the paw. She began to nod. "Yes, yes, I see wonderful things. A long and happy life," the dog yipped. Primrose got up, no longer trying to be quiet, said aloud, "Do you believe it?" and went out the back door. They sat in the van, the doors left open, as they had all been during the painting. "I don't know who's worse," said Primrose, "my mother or that weasel lady." "She came before?" said David. "Yeah, she comes a couple times a year. First time she came, she had a different dog. Guess it didn't have such a long and happy life after all." Primrose lay back and stared at the ceiling. She balled her fists and pounded the floor. "Dang!" She jumped up. She swatted her house beautifuls and sent them flying like paper ducks. "Why can't I just have a nice, normal mother like everybody else?" She stared at David, yet seemed unaware of the irony of her question. "A mother that cooks dinner, that takes me places, that buys me stuff. Ha!" Her laugh was cold. "Those rings on her feet you saw. Know where she got them? From me. I found them. I was going to sell them at the flea market. It's everything. Clothes, combs, ha! The stupid teddy bear." She rammed her thumb into her chest. "Mine." She flung herself outside, ranting. "She takes my stuff. My mother. Who's the daughter around here, anyway? I'm supposed to take her stuff." She stomped twice around the van, then came back in. "You know what's funny? You know what's really funny?" David, wide-eyed, shook his head. "I'll tell you what's really funny. She," pointed out the door, "she tells everybody the same thing. I see a long and happy life. Doesn't matter who. You could be ready to croak any minute. A long and happy life. A lobster heading for the pot. A long and happy life." She kept saying it in a funny way, her head wobbling like a puppet's, and David could not keep a laugh gob from popping out. Primrose didn't seem to notice. "Well, she's telling everybody else what a long and happy life they're going to have. What kind of life am I having, huh? What about my future, huh? I'll tell you what." She held out her hand. She pretended to trace lines on the palm. "Ah, yes, here we are. I see. I see. A short and crappy life." She gurgled up some spit, reared back, and sent a hawker flying out the door. "Phew! That's what I get." She left the car again. She was pacing, flinging her arms, kicking stones. "She's nutso, a crackpot, like that nutcake, waving at all the cars all day." She bent over and flapped her arm goofily at the horizon. As she stomped around the van, David tracked her, passing one door, then the other. She came back in. "You saw me at the library, remember?" David nodded. "Know why I was there, huh?" David shook his head. "I was there because I never went to sleep with my mother reading to me." She flopped onto the beanbag chair. "Did you?" David nodded. "Right. So did everybody else except me. I try it a couple times every summer. I go to summer story time. I close my eyes and try to pretend the voice is my mother's, but it never works. I just keep hearing the story and I never get to sleep." She snapped her face away from him. She slumped in the beanbag chair. In his mind, David heard the old familiar words. Mike Mulligan had a steam shovel, a beautiful red steam shovel. Her name was Mary Ann. How those words used to spin the drowsies about him night after night when he was little. Even now it tickled him that a steam shovel had a girl's name. He felt guilty for having such a warm memory in the presence of Primrose's pain. He wished he could make her feel better, but he could not think of anything to say. She was subdued now, dreamy. She reached for the framed portrait. She stared for a long time at the picture in her lap, and David understood that a great and terrible secret had fallen to him. He had been given custody of Primrose's dream, her heart. He understood that he could not tell her that he knew the truth. Not ever. Chapter 24. For 2 full weeks, Margaret Lempert wrestled with the question, should she or should she not ask David to go with her to Midsummer Night's screening? Though she knew that grandmothers were welcome, it annoyed her that the annual scary story at night at the library was billed as a parent and child event. For that matter, Life itself was billed as a parent-child event. Grandparents were not exactly banned, but neither were they invited. They were allowed. Grandparents were substitutes, stand-ins, expected to step in and play a role to perfection when the star was ill. But what happened when the star was more than ill? When her son's wife had died, Margaret Limpert had grieved as long and deeply as anyone. She had loved Carolyn as her own flesh and blood, and when David and his father came to live in her house, David became her new son in her mind and heart. It didn't take him long to set her straight. From the minute he arrived, he had been grumpy and silent and even mean with her. She was not even allowed to call him Davy. She thought she understood. He had lost his mother. He resented another person taking her place. Margaret backed off, gave him his space, as the saying went. But how much space can you give to someone who you live with? Someone you love? Was she supposed to let him go out in the cold without his gloves? Was she supposed to send him off to school without pointing out that his fly was open? She gave him what space she could, but matters only got worse. Their relationship came to be symbolized by a carrot. She left a fresh one, washed and peeled, next to his peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch each day. She was careful not to hound him about it. Only once did she mention that carrots were good for him. They supplied vitamin A, and as her own mother had told her time and again, they help one to see in the dark. The daily carrot became her last stand, one small, pitiful, final attempt to bond with her grandson. He never took a bite. Frustrated, she worked up her nerve for a showdown. She said to him at lunch one day, "We used to have such good times together." He went on munching his peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The carrot, as usual, lay untouched on the table. David, munching, as if she weren't there. She went away in tears. 2 days later, out of the blue, during lunch, an answer arrived. "You were Nana then." She stiffened. She stood in front of him, looking down on the top of his head, the brown hair she once loved to muss. "Then, I still am Nana." "No." "No." Something delicate inside her fell from an edge and shattered. She could not keep the tremble from her voice. "What am I now?" He did not reply. He got up and left the kitchen. A half-eaten sandwich lay on his plate. Sticking up out of the bread, like an orange dagger, was the uneaten carrot. Unwilling to add to her son's burden, she kept these things to herself. She bit her lip and counted to 10, and reminded herself, "He's only a little boy. Only a little boy." So it went for months, and she thought it pointless to even think about going to Midsummer's Night's Scream. But then, that one night, she had heard him laughing in his room. "Something funny on TV?" he had said, quite pleasantly. And now more recently, all these questions about the Clark Gable picture, little signs that he was thawing, inching back to his old self. She took courage. She dared to hope it could change. She chose the same setting as before, the kitchen, lunch. Again he was having peanut butter and jelly. Her nerves were quaking like a girl's. She asked if he would like to go with her to Midsummer's Night's Scream. He said no. Chapter 25. Primrose would have swallowed spiders before admitting it, but there was at least one way in which she was like her mother. She enjoyed pretending to be somebody she really wasn't. She had not done so since Easter morning, when she imitated a dead body in the leaves. Now another chance had come her way. It had begun with a poster she and David had seen at the 7-Eleven checkout counter. It told about the library's Midsummer's Night's Scream. Their first reaction was, "Let's go." Then Primrose noticed it said parent-child, and David said, "Oh." Days later, David told her his grandmother had asked him to go with her, and he had said no. "You're not the only one," said Primrose. "It's a problem for me, too." "What do you mean?" said David. "I mean I'm a kid, too. How am I supposed to get in without my mother?" "So ask her to go with you." "Yeah, right." Primrose was silent. She stared at him. A faint smile appeared. "What?" he said. "So who says I have to go as the kid?" David stared at her. He could see her meaning sink in. He said nothing. She didn't press it. Next day she said, "So, what do you think? Me going as a mother?" He shrugged. She thought about it. He wasn't saying yes, but he wasn't saying no either. That put Primrose ahead of his grandmother. She knew deep down he wanted to go. She also knew that out of respect for his mother, she shouldn't get too pushy about it. And then she found herself in a thrift shop, flipping through the ladies' clothes, picturing herself, asking herself, could I really pull it off? She could not resist. She bought the clothes. That night she put them on, along with the jewelry, makeup, and the final touch, her mother's blonde Madame Doofy wig. She practiced lowering her voice, standing, walking, sitting, waving. Hi, Mabel, laughing, sipping tea. She dressed herself up and tried to a test run to 7-Eleven. The girl behind the counter didn't say anything, didn't look at her funny. She thought about trying it on Refrigerator John, but chickened out. The plan was to keep it out of David's hands, spring it on him, let him see her in her mommy outfit, get used to it, see it was no big deal. So that's what she did the following day. When he came over, she met him at the doorway, with the outfit on. She posed. What do you think? He shrugged. Whatever. She kept the outfit on while they finished the paint job on the van. White with blue trim on the outside, bright green inside. A couple of times, stirring paint, she mentioned nonchalantly that as long as she had the outfit, well, heck, she might as well use it and go to Midsummer's Night's Scream. By herself, if need be. What were they going to do? Kick her out because she, a mother, showed up without a kid? I know you're not going, she said nonchalantly, stirring paint. But just to let you know, I'll probably have to walk past your house Wednesday night on my way to the library. Probably about 8 o'clock. She watched him out of the corner of her eye. He went on painting. He said nothing. He did not seem to have heard. On Wednesday night, 8:15, he was waiting in front of his house. Chapter 26. The only problem was the navy blue pantyhose. They must have been too big, because they kept bagging around her knees, and Primrose had to keep hiking them up. Well, maybe there was one other problem. The high heels. They were murder. She had just bought them today to top off the outfit. 95 cents at the thrift shop. And halfway to the library, her ankles were sore from all the wobbling. She wished mothers wore skates. The rest was fine. The powder blue mid-length skirt, white ruffled blouse, navy blazer, pearl necklace, pearl earrings, navy shoulder strap pocketbook, makeup. She had brought the wild blonde wig under control with hair gel. But more than anything else, it was the boy walking beside her, her son, that completed the outfit. It surprised Primrose to discover how easy it was to play with Mother. The thock of her high heels upon the sidewalk, the pocketbook brushing her side, declared she was a lady, maybe 25, 26. 2 blocks from the library, crossing the street, she took David's hand. 1 block away, she said to him with a touch of warning in her voice, as she imagined a mother would do, "Now, you behave tonight, hear?" He scowled at her. Outside the door, she stopped and pulled him around to face her. She cupped his chin in her hand and tilted his face upward. His face was clean, but she rubbed his cheek anyway, and clucked her tongue. "I bet you didn't brush your teeth either, did you?" He swatted her hand away. "Knock it off." She hiked up her pantyhose and took him inside. An arrow pointed downstairs to the community room. Hanging over the doorway were fake cobwebs that used to be pushed aside like curtains. Nothing especially scary seemed to be going on. A few little kids were going nuts. Otherwise, people were standing around munching cookies. The main thing that struck Primrose was that except for size, you could hardly tell mothers from the kids. They were all wearing jeans or shorts, sneakers or sandals. What was the point of being a mother if you didn't look like one? Disgraceful. As near as she could tell, 2 fathers were there. They weren't dressed any better, but with them it didn't seem to matter. It hurt to look at them. She turned away. Somebody approached in an ugly old hag costume. "Welcome, welcome," said the hag. "As you can see, I am Miss Viola Swamp. And who might you be? You be." Primrose cleared her throat and set her voice on low. She put her arm around David. "This is David Limpert, my son." For an instant, Miss Swamp seemed about to cackle hideously, but instead she said, "Good, good. Well, the program will begin shortly. In the meantime," she waved a bony hand, "help yourself to bug juice and spider cookies. Hee hee." And off she went. "This isn't scary," grumbled David. "It sucks." Primrose grabbed her shoulders. "One more word like that, young man, and you'll get your mouth washed out with soap." "Yeah?" he sneered. "Who's going to do it?" She shook him and whispered hard into his face, Don't you ever talk to your mother like that." His eyes locked on hers. To break the tension, she gave his nose a motherly tweak and whispered, "Don't have a cow. We're just pretending." When he walked off, she let him go. She caught her mother looking at her. She shrugged and rolled her eyes, gave a weary smile that said, These kids, what are we going to do with them? She found him at the refreshment table. He had one cookie in his mouth and one in each hand. Put them down. No, he said, spewing crumbs. She smacked a hand. The cookie fell. Pick it up. No. No respect, these kids today. Well, they weren't going to walk all over her. I said pick it up. No. She smacked the other hand, and the second cookie fell. Pick. No. She wanted to scream. She wanted to pour the bowl of bug juice over his head. She wanted to ram the cookies down his throat. Everything that came to mind, a mother wasn't allowed to do. So she pinched him. He howled. Ow! He pushed her. She pushed him. He screamed, Don't touch me. I'll touch you all I want. To prove it, she grabbed him. You're not my mother. Yes, I am. He kicked her in the sore ankle, freeing himself. No, you're not. He yelled and yanked the wig from her head. He flung it to the gallery of eyes and dashed out through the cobweb curtains.